Last week I got a message from a homeless man. His life hadn't turned out the way he planned it to turn out, and that if it weren't for OzHarvest, he would be starving. And he sent me a message saying that a homeless man says thank you. Before I started OzHarvest, I saw so much food go to waste. I knew that there were people in need, and I wanted to make a difference.
I remember being a young chef, and the lady I worked with, she just breaking me. It's like, why are you throwing the stalks of the broccoli away? And she sliced them, she crumbed them and served them on an antipasta platter. And that's when it started dawning on me, there's so much wastage that goes into the bin, and it doesn't need to. OzHarvest to me is not just about people wasting food, it's about feeding people, making people happy. That's what life's all about.
I want to give up my time for OzHarvest because I want to give back to the community in which I lived. Logistically, the process is quite complex. We're moving food from hundreds of different locations to hundreds of charities. We're trying to get to all our donors on time to provide a decent meal.
We have a lot of young men that come in here with brain injury, heroin and ice addictions. So we try and get these boys back on the road to recovery. OzHarvest provide a great opportunity for young men to get back on their feet. The saving that they pass on to us, we reallocate those funds into things like rehabilitation, essentially bringing balance and nutrition back into the lives of these boys.
I got into alcohol a lot. I was socially very inept, and so that would give me a lot of confidence to talk to people. I couldn't stop. The police caught me drink driving, which led me to go to the program. That's when you understand that you got a life to live. When the boys come in off the streets, they are sick, so the food does have a positive effect to get back to the healthy lifestyle, and the generosity of OzHarvest, it's the reason why I'm still here. Yeah, save people's lives.
One of the most touching moments I've had was when a woman came up to me and she said, I want to thank you. I didn't have any food and my son was going to school, behaving badly, and from the time that we started getting food from you, everything changed, and my son has just gone to university. Food is about sharing, food is about caring, food is about dignity. Every single time we throw away a banana with a freckle or an apple with a bruise, it is costing us the earth. I was working at events, much like this one, gala dinners, award nights, and creating thousands of kilos of food because nobody was going to leave my event and have to go to Macca's. And so the tables were groaning. And so when it came time to deciding what I needed to do, it was about taking good food that I knew was there, that had cost energy, fuel and water, and delivering it and sharing it with people who didn't have food. And so initially, the purpose of OzHarvest was to rescue food and deliver it to people in need. And to that end, as much as it's not about numbers, I will share that we have just delivered our 30 millionth meal from good food that would otherwise go to waste. So again, it's not about the numbers. I'm here to share with you some hideous facts about numbers. $8 to $10 billion worth of good food goes to waste in Australia every year. And I do not want to stand here at next year's conference and the year after and the year after telling you that that number hasn't shifted. OzHarvest was the first organization to recognize that surplus food was going to waste, perishable surplus food, and we are still the only organization that rescues food from delis and takeaways and boardrooms and hotels and fields and manufacturers, and we glean and we share that food with everybody. But if $8 to $10 billion worth of good food is going to waste, there is no way that we can do that by ourselves. So in order to address the issue, our purpose has grown. And our purpose now is to nourish our country. And we do that in three ways. The first is to rescue food because there's good food. And my goal and role was to put ourselves out of business in the food rescue sphere and clearly, we're not doing very well at that. Or we are doing very well, but there's still too much food going to waste. And so it's great that there are other organizations that have taken our model and are doing that too, because we would never manage, although we are in Queensland, South Australia, Victoria, WA, New South Wales, so we're in every state. But what's exciting about our big purpose is three things, our three pillars. So the first is food rescue. We do that. You've seen, you hear, and you can see our vehicles on the road. I guess our second stream is what I'm most excited about, because that is education. And so to that end, there are a couple of ways that we have to shift and change our behavior. So the first is advocacy, and so I'm really excited that that is a big part of what we are doing, and we'll be so excited to work more with Joel and more with Martin and anybody else who's around. But education is about changing your and I behavior, because until such time as we change and shift our behavior, nothing's going to change. And the second area, so that's the first, within education we have three streams. The one is just all of us. We are the United Nations Environmental Programme's partner, and annually, I don't know if any of you were at our event in July, but in July we run an event around the country, a national event called Think, Eat, Save, and we take surplus food and we feed 10,000 people, members of the public. We hold a panel, we have discussions, we share and explain how each and every one of us can learn to change our behavior, to shift our habits, to waste less food, to not buy in bulk for the sake of buying in bulk because it's cheaper, that we are thoughtful and mindful. It is part of a global campaign called Think, Eat, Save, and that is one of the ways that we educate all of us. But what happened when we started rescuing food was we realized that there were a lot of people who didn't know what to do with good food. We'd arrive with Wagyu beef and fresh salmon and bok choy. Very briefly, little story. If any of you have ever watched MasterChef, one of the places we rescue food from is MasterChef, and we arrived at an agency with some whole salmon. And the next day I got a call from the carer saying, I just want to share with you that we served the food, and one of the people who received that food came and said to us, I don't think we should be eating this food because it's off. And the carer said, I don't understand why you think this food was off. First of all, OzHarvest had the laws amended in New South Wales, ACT, Queensland and South Australia to have good food, to allow good food to be delivered for free without fear of liability. Secondly, they collected that food from MasterChef, which had bought it from the fish markets this morning. It was delivered and kept on ice and delivered in a refrigerated vehicle with a driver that understands safe food handling, delivered to us. We cooked the food, prepared it, and served it to you. Why do you think it's off? And she said, because the fish was pink. So it's about education. So what we recognized was that a lot of the people that were preparing food for vulnerable people and a lot of the people that we feed did not have the skills or understanding or knowledge to know how to feed themselves. So we created a program called Nest, which I'm very proud to say is rolling out around the country. We've delivered about 80 of these programs already. It is a healthy, we call it Nest, Nice, Easy, Simple Tips, or Nutrition Education Sustenance Training. And it's rolling out around the country, teaching vulnerable people and teaching ordinary people. We've just rolled this program out. Local communities, a couple have just asked us to provide the program there. The Literacy Foundation has asked us to work with them because you cannot learn if you have a hungry tummy. And so that's really the purpose of this program. There's 6 modules, and everybody at the end of the program does get their little booklet and just a gorgeous little story. We delivered the program actually really in Liverpool to about 12 kids who, it's a 6 module, so for 6 weeks we delivered the program. And during that time, this particular group of kids they were hip-hop dancers and were chosen to represent Australia in America, and so got sponsored and were so excited. So 2 things. I was at their graduation ceremony when they finished the 6 weeks of NEST program. And I have to share with you that they came to their graduation. They had made mortarboards and coats and cloaks to receive their certificate. They took this course seriously, and some of them had never finished anything before. But what was more exciting was that on going to the States, they told their organizers, we do not want to stay in a hotel. We want to stay in an apartment. And we created every single one of the recipes, and every part of this book we converted into American speak, pounds, cilantro, all of the things that they would purchase so that they could cook and feed themselves, because their comments were, we now know how to look after our bodies, our temples. And so this program is incredibly effective, and so education is hugely important. This program, what's really interesting is the other aspect of education is we have a regional program called REAP, which is, I recognize that OzHarvest was not suitable for smaller communities. The way we built OzHarvest is for cities. It is in Sydney, in Newcastle, in the Gold Coast, in Brisbane. And it didn't need the same model for a small community. So we have a program called REAP Harvest, and it's an acronym for Rescuing Excess with a Passion, or Regional Excess with a Purpose. And we teach volunteers, local people in local communities, how to run a food rescue program and how to take food that's surplus in the community and share it with people who don't have that. And very excitingly, and that's all volunteer-based, that's huge community-based. We've got 23 in development, 23 of those programs in every state, from Tassie to Northern Territory. And we have 6 of those programs working beautifully, and within those programs, we've taught those people NEST, and NEST is rolling out in regional Australia as well. Our 3rd education program that I'm really proud to share is called Nourish, and we had run some pilots, and as of last week, the first Nourish program has started. And Nourish is about taking vulnerable kids, youth, disadvantaged kids, who might have an opportunity to go to TAFE, but haven't taken it up, who might have an opportunity and get offered any and many different courses in hospitality training. But what we recognized was that actually most of these kids feel that they'll never get a job. And they're probably right, that they would do a course but not necessarily get a job. So since we have thousands of food donors, and so I guess OzHarvest is a connector. We take food and we deliver it to people. And now what we're doing is we're taking people and providing a pathway to employment. And so that first project, Nourish, started on Friday, and it is a hospitality training and food training program, which at the end of which all of our kids will get employment either through the food donors that we have or our connection and connectiveness with hotels and with any of those programs. In fact, this week is Good Food Month in Sydney, and during the next 2 weeks we have pop-up dinners every night in our new premises. We were just donated, so Joel spoke about organizations not having money. You're right, but quite honestly, the investment that people have made in us, every dollar that's invested in us, we can deliver 2 meals to people in need. We had our social return on impact measured and by Bain & Company, and every dollar invested in us provides $5.68 benefit to society. So on seeing that, one of our major donors is Goodman International, not Goodman Fielder, not the food people, but the industrial property people. They've just given us a warehouse, which they've converted into our headquarters, and upstairs is headquarters, downstairs is a training kitchen and production kitchen where the Nourish project is taking place. And this week and next week we have our pop-up dinners with Australia's top up-and-coming chefs, and some of the kids in our Nourish project and some of the kids who've studied Nest with us will be working with those chefs and serving food and starting their education program as we speak. So I guess what I really wanted to share with you was that OzHarvest is more than food rescue. OzHarvest is about shifting and changing behaviour and taking our third pillar, which I said the first was rescue, the second was educate, and the third is engage. And it's about taking our community, our people. OzHarvest is only the sum of the extraordinary people who volunteer with us, who support us, and who help us do what it is that we do, so that we can have some of the stats that I've mentioned, saving 10 million kilos of good food from going to waste, etc. So we're only as good as the people who work with us. So engage is our third pillar, and it is all about getting people involved, sharing what it is we do, and having people who care about good food, who care about civil society, who care about the discrepancies and the inequalities. I mean, I listen to Karen, and you can hear from my accent that I was not born in Australia. I call it my speech impediment. I was born in South Africa. And quite honestly, there's no doubt that part of what I do is because of the guilt I feel about what happened in South Africa. And there's absolutely no doubt that right here in this magnificent, exquisite, extraordinarily abundant country, right here, things need to shift, things need to change. You just have to listen to Karen to know that. You just have to look at the stats of all those figures that we've heard all morning to know that it begins with each and every one of us. This is a magnificent forum. I am so appreciative, and I thank you all so much for inviting me to share what it is we do. If you'd like to get involved with us, we would love to have you. I will also just share 4 things, because it's hard for me to stop. Number 1, if any of you take pictures of food, it's a habit that we've now into since we have social media. So if any of you take pictures of food and share that with your friends, your colleagues, your mates, will you please add #meal4a-meal? Because every time you send a food pic, Virgin Mobile pays OzHarvest to deliver a real meal to someone in need. So how easy is that to make mobile better? So that's one of the things I want to share with you. We have a new cookbook out. So our first one was OzHarvest, was 45 of Australia's top chefs who gave us recipes using surplus and put together this magnificent book, and that is still on sale. But our new cookbook's coming out on the 10th of November, on our 10th birthday, and that book is called Urban Harvest, and we have 50 of Australia's top chefs who've given us recipes of food they love, but it's actually about growing, eating, and taking responsibility to actually try and work to either have a little pot in your own garden, and I know you need time, or on your own balcony. By the way, that garden that we were filmed in is our little kitchen garden. We rescued the plants that were at last year's garden show with Indira Naidu when she had her balcony and veggie garden on display. We took all those plants and now have our own community and kitchen garden. So we rely on extraordinary people to help us. We rely on time, food, and money, and you will see that we are going to be so much more active on the advocacy and fighting to make sure that poverty and food insecurity and food security do not stay the way they are, and it is incumbent on each and every one of us. So please, let's all join together to make sure that we can hold our heads up high and say we are part of this movement. Thank you. If anyone would like This is our annual report. If anyone would like to look at it and see some of the stuff that we do. Of course, it was done for us for free. Nothing, we try not to pay for anything. So if you're going to come and offer me things for money, you will hear my answer. Free is what works for us. So this is Frost Design did this for us. But if anyone would like to look at it, I'd be very happy to share. And if anyone has any questions, I do just want to say that Joel mentioned 5% of our population. I just looked at the ACOS report that came out this week. 2.5 million Australians suffer from food security. 603,000 kids suffer from food security. It makes it about 13% of our total population. Pretty hideous. I've got those facts here if anyone would like to see them.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Ronnie.
Sure.
Now, Ronnie and Joe and Carol.